Hello everyone. Today in this video, we'll learn how to set up wireless guest network in your Dell SonicWALL firewall device. You might want to configure this type of network setup in your environment in case you want your guest client computers to communicate with each other, but you still want to restrict their communication with the internal network, that is your private LAN. In order to set up this kind of network infrastructure, your first step will be to click on this network link and make sure that this interfaces option is selected. On this interface, locate this wlan and click on this edit button out here. On this window, in the IP address field, specify any IP address that you want to assign to this particular interface. For example, we'll use 192.168.10.1. Specify any subnet mask that you want. In our case, we'll leave this as default. In this comment field, type any comment that you want. For example, we'll type testing, and to protect this device from any intrusions or accidental misconfigurations, you can uncheck these checkboxes. By the way, in our case, I'll leave this HTTPS checkbox checked so that this firewall device can be managed using web interface, and I'll click OK. Once this is done, click the accept button to apply the changes that you have made. With this, our first step is complete. In our next step, you'll configure the WLAN zone and you'll enable the WGS or wireless guest services. To do this, click on this zones link, and from this interface, click the edit button that is representing this WLAN. On this window, the very first thing that you would want to do is to disallow the interface trust. You can do this by unchecking this checkbox that says allow interface trust. The next thing that you would definitely want to do is to enable some security measures so that even your guest network remains protected from unauthorized accesses or intrusions. You can do so by checking these self-explanatory checkboxes. You can check all the checkboxes that are displayed here, or you can check some of them as per the requirements of your organization or the network setup. And once it is done, click this wireless tab. Make sure that this SSL VPN enforcement checkbox is unchecked, and uncheck this only allow traffic generated by the SonicPoint/SonicPointN checkbox. Once this is done, click this guest services. On this particular window, check this checkbox to enable the guest services. You might also want to check this checkbox that says enable inter-guest communication so that all the guest client computers that are connected to your guest network wirelessly can communicate with each other. And you can also check these self-explanatory checkboxes as per the requirements of your organization or the network infrastructure that you might have. And once these all configurations are done, you can click OK button to complete this second step as well. After completing the second step, now our third step will be to configure the wireless settings. That means we need to specify the security measures on this firewall appliance. And to do this, we need to specify the encryption method and the number of bits that the encryption would use to encrypt data that is transferred over the network wirelessly. So to start with the third step, you will locate the wireless link here. And you will locate the settings option here. On this settings window, first of all, you need to enable this WLAN radio by checking this checkbox. Once this is done, you will come down to the bottom and specify the SSID that will be displayed to the wireless client computers every time they search for any wireless network. So in our example, we'll use guest testing. We'll leave everything else as default. and we'll come up and click this accept button to save the changes that we've made. Once this is done, click on the security link, and here you can specify the type of authentication that you want this firewall device to work with, and you can choose any of the available options from the list. For our demonstration, we'll go with the simple things such as WEP, open system and shared key, and we'll use this alphanumeric characters to specify our shared key. From this drop-down list, we'll choose the appropriate encryption bit, for example 128-bit in our case, and you'll see that as soon as you will select any of the available encryption bits, this field automatically gets enabled and you can specify the password in this area. For our example, we'll use Once this is done, click the accept button to save the changes. And with this, we'll move on to our fourth step, that is configuring the network guest profiles. We can do this by locating the user's link and by clicking the guest services link. Once you are here, your first step will be to check this checkbox so that every time a guest computer logs on to the wireless network, the user is displayed with a logout button. After this, you can click the add button to create a new guest service profile, and on this window, in this profile name field, specify a new profile name. For example, guest profile. You can leave this field with the default values, or you can change the name for the prefix, for example U1. Once you're done with this, you can check or uncheck these self-explanatory checkboxes to customize your guest profile. For example, you can uncheck this enable account, which will automatically disable the account as soon as it is created. When this checkbox is unchecked, the new user account that is created must be enabled manually. On these options, you can specify the maximum lifetime of a user account in days, minutes or hours. Once this is done, you can click the OK button, and you can see that the new guest profile is added in the list. You can click the accept button to save the changes, and the fifth and the last step in this entire configuration setup will be to configure the guest accounts. You'll click here. When you click this, you'll have this guest accounts interface where you can click the add guest button to add a new guest account. On this window, your first step will be to choose any guest profile, and since we have created a new guest profile in our previous step, we can click this drop down list and we can choose the guest profile that we've already created. Now, as soon as I selected this guest profile that I've already created, you can see that this username prefix is automatically added and the username is auto-generated by the firewall. You can change the comment to make it a bit more descriptive. We'll leave this for now. We'll also leave this default password alone for now, and we'll click this guest services button. Here you can customize the settings of this particular guest user account, and you can make the modifications as per your requirements. For example, you can check this button to activate the account as soon as the user logs on using this account for the very first time, and you can again make the modifications according to your requirements from these fields, and it'll click OK. You can see that the user account is automatically added to the list, and once this is done, you can either click this add guest button again to create a new user account, or you can click the accept button to save the changes that you have made. We'll click accept. Once everything is done, you can safely log out from this interface and you can start working normally.